How to end dominance of US dollar. According to the Bank of International Settlements, 62% of the foreign currency local liabilities of banks are settled in dollars. Given this set of facts, although the dollar will face competition from the euro, pound, RMB and yuan, there is no imminent danger of the dollar losing its reserve currency status. Maybe. Is there any need to replace US dollar as a global reserve currency with something else? What kind of negative impacts the US dollar as a reserve currency has on other countries or their currencies? Okay, before we continue, if you like what we talk about on this channel and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. I'll give you a few seconds to do that and then we'll continue. Let's start with understanding what the reserve currency is. So, what is a reserve currency? A reserve currency is a large quantity of currency held by central banks and other major financial institutions around the world to use for international transactions. One of the main reasons why central banks hold a reserve currency is that they need to use a reserve currency to trade most commodities, as those commodities are priced in the reserve currency. One of the benefits of using the reserve currency in international trade is that it reduces exchange rate risk. Since there is no need for any country to exchange its currency for the reserve currency to do trade. Since 1944, the United States dollar has been the primary reserve currency used by other countries. As a result, foreign nations closely monitor the monetary policy of the United States to ensure that the value of their reserves is not adversely affected by inflation or rising price in the United States. This is one of the reasons why it's not a good idea to have one reserve currency. We live in a multipolar world, and a multipolar global economy requires a new international monetary and financial system, IMFS. It will take some time until the new system emerges. Transitions between global reserve currencies are rare events. It requires dramatic changes in the international world order. The US emerged as a dominant economic power as other countries with big economies lost a lot as a result of 2 world wars in the 20th century. In 1944, following the Bretton Woods Agreement, delegates from 44 nations formally agreed to adopt the US dollar as an official reserve currency. Since then, other countries pegged their exchange rates to the dollar, which was convertible to gold at the time. Because the gold-backed dollar was relatively stable, it enabled other countries to stabilize their currencies. In the beginning, the world benefited from a strong and stable dollar, and the United States prospered from the favorable exchange rate on its currency. The foreign governments did not fully realize that although gold reserves backed their currency reserves, the United States could continue print dollars that were backed by its debt held as US treasuries. As the United States printed more money to finance its spending, the gold backing behind the dollar diminished. The increased monetary supply of dollars went beyond the backing of gold reserves, which reduced the value of the currency reserves held by foreign countries. As the United States continued to flood the markets with paper dollars to finance its escalating war in Vietnam and variable social programs like Medicare, Medicaid, the Older Americans Act, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the world grew cautious and began to convert dollar reserves into gold. The run on gold was so extensive that US President Richard Nixon was compelled to step in and decouple the dollar from the gold standard, which gave way to the floating exchange rates that are in use today. Soon after, the value of gold tripled and the dollar began its decade-long decline. The reason why the US dollar remains the world's currency reserve is due to the fact that countries accumulated so much of it and that it was still probably the most stable and liquid form of exchange, but that is changing rapidly. The euro, introduced in 1999, is the second most commonly held reserve currency in the world, but today RMB is the most likely candidate for true reserve currency status, even though it has a long way to go before it's ready to assume the mantle. The initial building blocks are there. Already, China is the world's leading trading nation, overtaking the US at the start of this decade. And the renminbi is now more common than sterling in oil future benchmark, despite having no share in the market prior to 2018. Here's what Mark Carney, a former chief of Bank of England, says concerning this matter. The greater use of the renminbi in international trade is leading to its growing use in international finance. This has been enabled by reforms to China's monetary, foreign exchange and financial systems that have liberalized and improved its financial market infrastructure, making the renminbi a more reliable store of value. The Belt and Road Initiative could foster further take-up of the renminbi in both trade and finance. While the rise of the renminbi may over time provide a second-best solution to the current problems with the international monetary and financial system, first best would be to build a multipolar system. The main advantage of a multipolar international monetary and financial system is diversification. Multiple reserve currencies would increase the supply of safe assets. While the likelihood of a multipolar international monetary and financial system might seem distant at present, technological developments provide the potential for such a world to emerge. Such a platform would be based on the virtual rather than the physical. History showed that the rise of a reserve currency is founded on its usefulness as a medium of exchange, by reducing the cost of increasing the convenience of international payments. The additional functions of money as a unit of account and store of wealth come later and reinforce the payments motive. We should come up with a new payments infrastructure based on international stablecoin, fully backed by reserve assets in a basket of currencies including the US dollar, the euro, and the RMB, yen, and sterling. Such a new synthetic hegemonic currency, SHC, would be best provided by the public sector, perhaps through a network of central bank digital currencies. Widespread use of the synthetic hegemonic currency in international trade and finance would imply that the currencies that compose its basket could gradually be seen as reliable reserve assets, encouraging emerging market economies to diversify their holdings of safe assets away from the dollar. Just before you leave, if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. Of course, if you like the things we talk about on this channel. Thank you. Till next time. Bye.